Good evening and welcome to Grammar Video 2, Sentence Parts and Basic Phrases. So you should be on this grammar video if you are going to be a sophomore and if you've already completed Grammar Video 1. So just like I said in Grammar Video 1, this video is not supposed to be a thorough explanation of these grammar concepts, nor is it supposed to be very detailed. Instead, this grammar video is supposed to be a brief review of stuff you've already learned during your freshman year of high school. Now, if for some reason you've either forgotten all the grammar I've taught you during freshman year, or if you're a transfer student and you never covered this at your high school, please feel free to email me if you need a more thorough explanation or if you need additional resources. I'll be happy to help you. Okay, so sentence parts and basic phrases. Okay, so let's first talk about a sentence versus a phrase. All right. So with a sentence or even a clause, the sentence or clause, you basically have a subject plus a verb. Okay, so if you have a complete sentence or if you just have a clause, you will always have a subject plus a verb. Now, a phrase is a group of words, and in this group of words, you don't have a subject and a verb. All right, so with a phrase, you have a group of words, but you don't have both a subject and a verb. So you don't have both a subject plus a verb. Okay? So a sentence or clause, you have a subject and a verb. A phrase, you have a group of words, but you don't necessarily have a subject plus a verb. Okay. So let's go through a couple of examples of a phrase. Let's go through a couple of examples. Of a clause or sentence. All right, so an example would be like, I ran to the store. Okay, so notice I have a group of words, but it has both a subject and it also has a verb. Whereas on the other hand, when I have a phrase, with a phrase, I still have a group of words, but I don't have both a subject and a verb. So an example of phrase would be, in the store, or running down the hall. All right, in both of these examples, so in the store, running down the hall, in both of these examples, I don't have a subject plus a verb. So I don't have subject plus a verb. That's what makes it a phrase. Now, in this phrase, I might have a noun, I have a preposition, I have an article, but I don't have a verb here. With this one, running down the hall, okay, I have a noun, okay, and I have an article, and I have a verb acting as a noun, but I don't have a subject. I don't have a subject and I don't have a main verb. That's how I know that these two things are phrases and they're not clauses or sentences. All right. So later on in this video, we'll be talking about two main kinds of phrases I want you to know about. We'll be talking about appositive phrases and we'll also be talking about prepositional phrases. Okay, but before we get to that, I do want to talk about subjects, predicates, and complements. So subjects, predicates, and complements, these are parts of sentences. So these are parts within a sentence or within a clause. So within a sentence or clause. So you wouldn't have a subject and a predicate if you just had a phrase. You would only have a subject and a predicate, and you would only possibly have a complement only if you have a sentence or a clause. All right? Okay. So let's just go through this briefly. So the subject is what is your clause or sentence about. So it's the main who, it's the main noun in your sentence. So it's what your sentence is mainly about. It's the main noun in your sentence. Okay? Your predicate is going to be basically your verb in the sentence. It's going to be your helping verbs if you have any. So helping verbs if you have any. Plus your main verb. Okay? So again, subject is what your sentence is mainly about. Predicate is going to be your helping verbs, if you have any, plus your main verb. If you don't have any helping verbs, then your predicate is just going to be your main verb. Okay, let's talk about complements. Complements was probably the hardest thing you guys had trouble with during the fall. So let's do a review of that. So with complements, I like to break it up into two possibilities. So your complements will depend on what type of predicate you have. All right? Now, just a note, you won't always have a complement. So you won't always have a complement. However, it's always going to be a possibility when you have a sentence. So for your complements, if you have an action verb, here are your possibilities for complements. If you have an action verb, you're either going to have as a complement a direct object. So a direct object receives the action. So you either have a direct object which receives the action, or you'll have an indirect object plus a direct object. All right? So your indirect object receives a direct object. Or none of the above. So if you have an action verb, you have three possibilities. You'll either have a direct object, so the direct object is what receives the action. You'll either have an indirect object plus a direct object, so the indirect object is what receives the direct object, or you'll have none of the above. Now, if you have a linking verb, you'll either have a predicate nominative. So predicate nominative it's a noun and it renames the subject. So you have a linking verb, you'll either have a predicate nominative. So predicate nominative will always be a noun and it's going to rename your subject. Or you'll have a predicate adjective. So predicate adjective is going to be an adjective and it's going to be it describes your subject. Okay? Or again, none of the above. All right, so if you have a linking verb, if you do have a complement, it'll either be a predicate nominative, so it's going to rename your subject, or you'll have a predicate adjective, which will end up describing your subject. All right? Okay, compound subjects and predicates. Okay, so this is just a note. It is possible to have two subjects and two predicates in a sentence. So it is possible to have multiple subjects and predicates. Okay, an example would be if you have a neither nor situation. So if you have something like neither Bob nor Joe likes cookies. So this is just an example. Notice that I have two subjects. My two subjects are Bob and Joe. All right. So likewise, if you have two main verbs in a sentence, you could possibly have a compound predicate. So like with neither nor situations, both and, either or, what you basically have is you basically have compound subject. Anyways, that's just a little side note that might help you out. Okay, let's talk about different phrases. Okay, so with phrases, so there are many different types of phrases. I'm just going to go into the main two that we've talked about this year. One phrase that we talked about was something called the appositive phrase. So an appositive phrase, it's basically a group of words that renames a noun. So a group of words that renames a noun. All right? So for example, Joe, a great engineer, builds bridges. In this case, a great engineer, it's a phrase and it's modifying Joe. So this is my appositive phrase and it's modifying Joe. So this is an appositive phrase. All right. Okay, prepositional phrases, because we've already been through prepositions, so we won't go over this in detail. But in a prepositional phrase, what you have is you have your preposition in plus any modifier. So let's say example, in the house. In a prepositional phrase, you have your preposition plus any modifiers. You won't always have a modifier, but you usually do. Plus your object of the preposition. Okay? So with a prepositional phrase, you'll always have a noun following your preposition. All right? Prepositional phrase, you'll always have a noun following the preposition, such as in the house. And you usually, between your preposition and object of the preposition, you'll usually have modifiers in between. All right? So these are just, so again, we've looked at, so these are just the two types of phrases we've looked at this year. We've looked at appositive phrases, and we've also looked at prepositional phrases. All right? Okay, just a tricky item. This is a note. Your object of the preposition cannot be a subject or a complement. So your object of the preposition cannot be your subject or complement. So if you have a noun following a preposition, you can automatically rule that out as either your subject or a complement. If you have a noun following a preposition, your object of the preposition will never be the subject or complement. Okay, so you have practice problems for Grammar Video 2. They're very similar to what we've already covered. All right. If you have questions or you want to check your answers, please feel free to email me. So what you're doing on these problems is you're first labeling the parts of speech. And after labeling the parts of speech, you're going to answer questions about the subject, predicate, and complement. And you're going to be answering questions about the phrases. All right? If you have any questions, let me know, and God bless you.